In the last week, this is what I've read. I read all of these in a week. What is up, booktube? It is Monty, and today I am back again, once again with another video. We're doing another reading vlog, so here we go. So last week, you'll know that I read 6 books in a reading vlog, and that was a lot. I think that's a lot of books for 4 days, one reading vlog. You know, I was pretty impressed with it, and today, this week, little over a week probably, who knows, but in this one I'm going to try and outdo myself and read closer to 10 books, like 9 if I can count. This is for over here. Yes, reading 9 books. Hopefully it'll happen. Maybe it won't. If you're watching this, then it did happen. Earlier this year, I kind of tweeted a little jokey joke, might have even been last year, where I said, 2019, caught up on Cassandra Clare. We went into the Dark Artifices. We did the Infernal Devices. I caught up with everything that was out at the time. I've since, I really do not care about Cordelia and all her people. So whatever's happening over there in the last hours, I have no clue. Maybe when that third book comes out, I'll jump in, marathon, who knows. But until then, I've checked out of Miss Cassandra Clare. Then last year, 2020 was the year of Sarah J. Maas. So we did House of Earth and Blood. We did Throne of Glass. We've done the A Court of Thorns and Roses. I do have Catwoman, Soul Stealers still left to read. Spoiler alert, I might have picked up the graphic novel adaptation of that to knock that out, count that as my win. So that leaves, there's like other big YA authors, your Saba Tahirs, your Tahara Mafis, like people who have like come in, made a name for themselves, your Ransom Riggses. People exist in this space, right? That I haven't read. And spoiler alert, those are not the authors we're going for. But I do think there is one author that is sort of in that mix, like that trio of people, your Cassandra Clare, your Sarah J. Maas, and Leigh Bardugo. So here we are. We're doing it. We are starting off a Leigh Bardugo run on the channel. Hopefully, like I said, we are going to run through this in 1 week. We're going to do what we need to do. We're going to get it done. And that be the end of it. So I've already started my reread of Shadow and Bone, which I have a review up on the channel. But as I read this, I'm almost done with it. Started it earlier today when I finished Monogamy. And I'm enjoying it. I'm on page 221. It's very much like, it's like I remember, but at this point in my life, I'm enjoying it more. So Alina's in the Little Palace. She has just started mastering her abilities as a sun summoner. She is, doing what needs to be done to move on. And I'm excited to see where things go for Alina and to finally finish out the trilogy with my editions of Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising. I didn't know that these new covers came in hardback, but they do. So I bought them, obviously. I bought this in like January, and I was told it was the OG cover, which is like the hardest to find. And then this showed up. So because this showed up, I did have to, continue. So they match. They look pretty together. I will say that these are shorter than normal hardbacks, apparently, because they're definitely not the same size as what I'll be picking up once I finish that trilogy, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. These are obviously not the original run of the books because they're not sprayed edges, but that's fine with me. Oh, these are different. Okay. So those have glossy finishes, and this has like a regular finish, and this is like very gritty. I don't know if I like that, but they're taller than their siblings, the Grisha over there. And then King of Scars is like impossible to find in hardcover in the store at this point. They only have that ugly ass paperback. So that copy is coming from Amazon. It'll be here in a couple of days. So hopefully by that point I won't be at King of Scars yet, but I'll have it ready to go. But I'd pick up Rule of Wolves, which I do think is the prettiest Grishaverse novel naked. I think it has the best naked hardback, so I'm hoping I like this conclusion to the Nikolai duology. But I did not want to just read the Grishaverse novels and be stuck in that world, because I do own Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I bought this at the time of release. I read the first 100 pages and I said I was bored, so I set it down and I never picked it back up. But at this point, people never shut up about Ninth House. I've read a couple of more dark academia books. I have a firmer understanding that I actually don't fuck with the genre, but maybe as part of the experiment, I will get around to Ninth House. And then I also picked up Wonder Woman Warbringer, the graphic novel adaptation, which was penned by Louise Simonson, but of course based on the Leigh Bardugo book. I figured that these would probably be better as graphic novels. That's why I also picked up the Sarah J. Maas version. And I want to read them as graphic novels. And if I enjoy the graphic novel, then I might pick up the regular hardback book and throw it on my Bardugo shelf. So this is the project. This is the goal. Like I said, I'm starting this today and I'm already almost done with Shadow and Bone. Next week, again, I'll be doing what I can to get through these books. As I look at them all laid out in front of me, I am slightly nervous, but I think it's going to go well. I think that because I'm already enjoying Shadow and Bone, which is the first, in her writing career, that as we go on, things might get better. I do think that if I'm going to make predictions about which series I'm going to enjoy the most, I do think I'm going to like Shadow and Bone more than I like the Six of Crows duology. I know everyone and their mother loves Six of Crows. I know everyone loves the Crows. I know everyone wants to be with the Crows. I don't think I'm going to really fuck with them as much as I do with Shadow and Bone. And then the Nikolai duology, I don't know. I think it's going to come down to, one, how I feel about Nikolai, because I've never met him. And based on my impression of like Nina from the show, because I think Nina is in the Nikolai duology, based on if she's like that in the books, I might fuck with her. So getting to continue with her could be fun. But Ninth House, I think, is the one that I'm the most like, I don't think that's going to be for me. I think Ninth House is going to be the lowest rated book in this video. So we'll have to see if I'm correct by the end of this. I've done a lot of these kinds of things where I've read an author's backlist, but never in a reading vlog like this. I think the most I've read in a reading vlog for an author was like 2. I read like City of Ashes and City of Glass in a reading vlog together. And I think I did a reading vlog where, no, because those were all my Court of Thorns and Roses stuff is like standalone reviews. And then my Throne of Glass was a group review. So I'm excited to see this play out. This is the most books by a single author I've attempted to read at a single time, because Throne of Glass, Throne of Glass has 8, I want to say, because of Assassin's Blade, but I think there was a small break in there. But I do think that like books 3 through 7 were pretty much back to back to back to back. So this is the most I've attempted to read by one author in a single period with no breaks, nothing like that. So wish me luck. But this intro is long enough. Okay, so I'm going to try and make this quick because I'm about to do some live sprints with Monet and Alana on Monet's channel. If I remember, I will try to leave those linked if you want to watch the playback. But I finished Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. My big takeaways are, this is a lot closer to the first season of the Netflix show than I thought it was. I could definitely see where they had like changed some of the timeline and allowed for the crows to be introduced into scenes that weren't that well fleshed out in here, because a lot of this isn't the most detailed descriptions of Alina's time at the Little Palace. Once she gets there, there is a lot of room for that kind of a thing. I also think that the show was just better because we get to see Mal doing the tracking of the stag, and so getting to see his perspective and to see him doing the things instead of it just being Alina's perspective also adds to the overall story that the Netflix show was doing. But overall, like I said, this is a decent book. It was 3 stars for me. I don't remember what I gave it all those years ago. I'll have to double check on my Goodreads, but overall I don't hate it. The thing that I think confuses me the most is I think that show Mal and this Mal and Shadow and Bone are very similar characters, and so I'm waiting to see if he ever has this change that everyone claims that he does, because as of right now, I think they're very similar. I still appreciate Book Mal just as much as I appreciate Show Mal, probably because when I was reading the book. I was picturing Archie. So we finished this. The worst part for me is the ending. I do think the ending is a little bit too series dependent. I wish it stood on its own just a little bit, or that it was executed better. It still isn't my favorite ending for a first book, but it is what it is. Like I said, 3 stars. I don't have too many complaints. I enjoyed my time. I had a good time. Probably more so this time than I did the first time that I read it. So that's always a bonus, especially when I'm doing a project like this where if the first book is horrible, you can only assume it's going to get even worse as we go along. So as long as we stay at this same level, I think we're going to be just fine. As for what I'll be reading next, we're going straight into Siege and Storm, the sequel. I've never read past the prologue to this, I want to say. So I'm excited. I think Nikolai appears briefly in this one. So I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see more of the plot develop, to see where the story is going to go. See what influences they can pull in for the show as it goes on, and all that other stuff. And also just to see the things that other people know about the trilogy for myself. So I'm excited for that. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping to make some pretty decent progress during these sprints tonight. But that's what I got. I'll check in with you guys when I have more to check in about. So I feel like this vlog is going to be y'all are going to be a little bit mad at me. So here we are. I was supposed to be reading Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. And I did read Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. But the problem is, so we finished Shadow and Bone. I updated you guys. I said I was going to start this. And then I did some reading sprints on Monet's channel, Life is Monet, where I started Siege and Storm. And I ended that with like 60 pages to go. And so coming back and doing an update felt a little silly. And so I just read the whole book. But I'm here now. We're going to talk about it. And hopefully you guys don't hate me too much. So my initial thoughts on Siege and Storm are that I did enjoy it more than I enjoyed Shadow and Bone. And I think that my greatest takeaway from this so far is that in 2012, there probably were books that were dual perspective, multi-POV. And I think that the Grisha trilogy would have benefited from that greatly. And like I said, when I was updating you guys on Shadow and Bone, I do believe that is why I do think that's actually why the Netflix show was structured the way that it was, because so many of the events that happened in Shadow and Bone happened also on the Netflix show in the same order essentially, but we got to see it from multiple perspectives, and that made the show to me a little bit more dynamic. I didn't need the crows there, but I did enjoy seeing, some of the elements from the book from a different perspective. That was nice. Specifically getting to see Mal and what he was up to. And so a lot of what I think doesn't work about Siege and Storm is that we are still just a single POV. Because Alina is great. Alina is fine. I do not hate Alina Starkov. But I do think that sometimes she is really just really good at knowing where people need to be. Like, Alina herself isn't the world's best, like, tactician or whatever. She's just really good at seeing what other people are really good at and how that is going to help her. And I think that is actually a very important skill to have, specifically if you are demanding that you be in charge of the Second Army and you are, trying to fight the Darkling and bring peace to Ravka or whatever it is you're doing, right? Like, if you're trying to maneuver yourself into a position of power, I think you have to have something to bring to the table. And sure, she's the Sun Summoner and she has, 2 amplifiers now. But she's also just really good at seeing where people need to be and putting them there, and knowing that because they're there and she put them there, it is going to benefit her in the long run. Because it's not like she came up with David's design, was like, here, I need this giant, parabola so I can start slicing and dicing from over here and they're way over there and I have, all of this energy. So she's good at like seeing where people need to be and letting them do their thing and being like, this is going to help me. As for Nikolai, we have finally met our, Princey Prince, and I don't really care about him. I think that he had a really interesting character introduction, but as for him specifically, I'm still like, I don't really care one way or the other. I do think that this book also has a pacing problem. It's not as pronounced as Shadow and Bone. Like, for me, Shadow and Bone is like, it's fine. I do think that there were moments in the narrative that I didn't need to skip through time. Leigh Bardugo was having us skip through time, but I feel like Siege and Storm is almost worse because this one feels more intense. Like in Shadow and Bone, like Sis could be at the little palace training for however long she needs to train. There's no real threat there. But here we have clear and present danger in the fact that the Darkling has pretty much announced war on Ravka, right? Like he has decided that he is going to be the destroyer of Ravka, and he wants Ravka to bend the knee, and he is going to be the person in charge. And so when she gets back to the little palace and she's there and, doing her thing, there's still this imminent threat that like he could attack the little palace. And so when he finally does around like page 350, not even 350, like 380, and there's like 50 pages left of the book, it does feel like, I don't know, like maybe we could have worked this out better. Maybe we could have had the scenes of the little palace like feeling more like Alina was doing things. But ultimately, I think the problem is that it's just Alina's perspective. And so we know it's very much the same thing that was happening in A Court of Thorns and Roses, specifically Akamath and Akawar. Mostly, really Akamath. I think that Akamath and Siege and Storm they have the same issues, which is interesting to me. So we know that in both cases, there's supposed to be this really big war that's happening, and other characters are preparing for war, and other characters are doing things. But Feyre and Akamath and Alina in this one, they aren't doing. I mean, Alina's doing a little bit more to get ready for this war than Feyre was, but they're both just generic training sequences, right? Like they're both important characters who are doing generic training sequences to get through before an attack at the end of the book. And then that attack at the end of the book happens, and then we are prepared and ready to go into the last book in a trilogy where the characters have been beaten down, they're bloodied, they're the scrappy underdog again, because we saw Alina amass all of this power. And so in order to have another triumphal arc, she has to then be beaten down. That's what happens here. And it's interesting, it's fine, but I think on my reading spreadsheet I gave it 4 stars, but I think it's also just 3. I think I'm going to go back and give it 3 stars. I enjoyed it, but I do think that a lot of the issues I had, and it's not fair to say that it could have been remedied by multi-POV, but it definitely could have. And in this one, they're all in the same place preparing for the same thing. So like it would have been a little bit less interesting, I guess, but it would have provided much needed context. I also continue to not understand why people do not like Mal. I understand that he and Alina have several arguments in this book, and maybe it's all in Ruin and Rising. I don't know. But whatever he was saying in this one made sense to me. Like, I wouldn't have been like walking up to my, the person I love and was like, whatever. But I also think that a lot of in a lot of the arguments that they were having in this one, Mal was fully recognizing that Alina had changed, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. He still liked her even though she had changed, but there was now no longer room for him in her life, and that too was okay, but pretending like there was the problem. And so why people hate this man actually makes no sense, because y'all had me out here thinking that Mal was like some emotionally stunted man. I mean, I say man, but both of these are children. They are 16-ish. Like, they're not adults. Like, they still have, children get to be emotionally messy. They do. Like, you can still you don't have to appreciate children and their actions. But so far, nothing of what Mal has said, y'all are out here hating him for no fucking reason. He don't even like you. So why are you mad? Like, you have him in your thoughts, and I can promise you that Malian Aretsev is not thinking about you. He is not paying you any mind. That's that's neither here nor there. So maybe I'll see it in Ruin and Rising. But like so far, he has been a very emotionally intelligent as far as I'm concerned. I think that he fully realizes that like they are just different people now and that's okay. Like pretending otherwise would be foolish. So why they want to pretend otherwise doesn't make sense to him. And that makes sense to me. So that's all that I have to say for Siege and Storm. Like I said, I think I'm going to wind up giving it 3 stars and not 4. I don't know. I'm still wishy-washy on it. And then I'm going to pick up Ruin and Rising, probably for my sprints tonight, but I might pick it up before then. I've yet to make a determination there. So I just wrapped up my live reading sprints, and I made it pretty far into Ruin and Rising. I am currently on page 292, so love that for me. So at the start of the book, like I said in the last clip, our good sis Alina Starkov has been beaten down. She was forced into the underground tunnels, like under Ravka. So she's forced into these underground tunnels. She is saved by the apparat, and that's where she is like hiding out. Where low key at the beginning of this book, she is almost like being held hostage, a little bit, kind of, sort of. Then we get this really cool scene where their plan to get free works. It's a little bit convoluted. I don't know if I fully bought into everything that was happening there, but they got free. I was here for it. They have escaped out into the surface world once again, and they eventually link up with Nikolai, who takes them into Fierda, who is like, that seems like a little suspect, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do to survive out here in these Ravkan streets, or I guess technically, like I said, they're in Fierda. Then we get this scene eventually with Alina like cutting up a mountain, which I thought was a little silly, but you know what? Good for the good sis. We knew she was powerful. Sis got 2 amplifiers. She wields light. Like I'm not gonna fuck with Alina Starkov. I'll let you fuck with Alina Starkov, but for me, I'm good on that one. I don't need to do it. I never wanted to do it. In that whole sequence of events, from like them leaving to the cutting of the mountain, I think the most shocking thing to me is that Mal's I am become a blade tattoo is like a whole back piece. I thought it was just like the little saying, but he has like a compass type situation because you know he's a tracker, but it's also, you know, kind of Sun-esque, you know, because he's in love with Alina, and then his little I am become a blade. And you know, is it great grammar? Not really. Um, I am become a blade. I'm good, but also I don't think it's. I don't know. For me, none of the things that y'all have been telling me about Mal are like that bad. I I really don't understand why these like I really don't understand it. It's giving very like it's giving bland. Like all of the criticisms that I'm seeing as I read this book is giving very bland. I will say that Mal continues to just be weird though. Like his tracking skills feel a little bit unnecessary the way that Leigh Bardugo has chosen to implement them, like when they were escaping and like he has to shoot this bag of like explosive powder and he's like, "Oh, I was able to do it because there was a beetle and I tracked the beetle." And it's like, you knew where the beetle was though. So like, what is there to really track if you know where it is because you threw it? So some of it doesn't make sense to me. Some of it definitely feels like magic. I also feel that it's really strange that Leigh Bardugo decided to write a fantasy series and then created such strict rules about the magic system and how the Grisha don't actually do magic and that magic is like evil or something, and it like I don't even know what the fuck it does, but we know that the Darkling is using it. I'll also say I didn't touch on this in my Siege and Storm discussion, but I definitely talked about it on Zoom, and it's become a little bit more annoying here in Ruin and Rising. But this like forced connection that they have, the Darkling and Alina, I don't fuck with it. This thing where in this one she visits him, and like in the last one he was like right in the shadows or something. Those are both unnecessary additions because to me it's like, if magic is really not something that is done in this world, I would just rather not see it. Like if you wanted to double down on this small science bullshit, Like, I don't understand how there are people who can be born to manipulate the small science and people that aren't if it's not magic. Because if you're just doing that, then one would assume that you could, like, anybody could. Why there would be people who can't do that doesn't make sense. Or why the people that could do that would be such a small minority doesn't make sense. And so for me, I would much rather it just be fucking magic, but because it's not, the fact that the Darkling is doing magic and Alina is doing magic, I don't understand the point of it. It doesn't seem like it adds anything to the narrative. In fact, it almost feels like an active hindrance to the narrative, which is never a good thing. And so when the Darkling, like I said, in Siege and Storm was like popping up on the Force connection, it was annoying. And now that he's doing it here, it's annoying. And I also have to say that him turning Nikolai into a literal monster, I don't understand the point of that either. Monet says that it's going to come into play in Nikolai's series, which I would assume so. But also, Nikolai doesn't get turned into a monster until like literally the halfway point of this book, and I know that it's a YA fantasy, so there's going to be some kind of happy resolution there, so he's going to get turned back, I would assume. I would assume we're not starting off King of Scars with him still a monster, and I can understand that would be kind of traumatizing, but traumatizing to the point where I would need a duology about it, I don't know. Maybe. I feel like there are definitely more traumatic events in Nikolai's life that I would rather see explored than his time as a half monster that wanted to kill his friends. But maybe Miss Bardugo will prove me wrong. I am having a good time, but the continued sense that this is a single POV narrative is upsetting to me. And so I do like that for the rest of the book set in this world, it's not that. I appreciate that Bardugo has been like, yeah, we're just going to open it up a little bit and we're going to continue to have these outside perspectives, and I hope that she's able to do that in a way where the characters don't sound the same. That's my only worry going forward into the era where that's different. So, having a good time. Some of the stuff isn't as bad as I was told it was. Some of the stuff still doesn't make sense, but it is what it is at this point. There's not really anything I can do to change that. The series is pretty much locked and loaded. Although Monet also says that the duology is going to erase everything, or Nikolai's duology, I should say, is going to erase everything that I've come to know about the Grisha world and everything that's happening here. So I'm trying not to be too attached to everything because I understand that some things are going to be up for fluctuation. But of the things that I've heard heavily criticized the most, some of it I think is just unnecessary, and some of the criticism just sounds extra bland. But it's not like the best series I've ever read, but it's also nowhere near as bad as I was dreading it to be. So on that level, I'm happy. Welcome back, you guys. I finished Ruin and Rising, and I think on my spreadsheet I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So I actually really enjoyed this one. I felt that the story wrapped up nicely. I had a good time. A lot of the same issues that I had. Let me just grab these since we're here. A lot of the issues that I had with the trilogy overall, I still had with the last one over here, Ruin and Rising. I felt that if this had been later, we would have been multiple perspectives, because Six of Crows is multiple perspective. The Nikolai duology, to my understanding, is multiple perspective. We're following more characters than just Nikolai. And so for me, I think that if Leigh Bardugo had this to do over again, she would do it multiple perspective. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, Ninth House is a single perspective story from what I remember from those first 100 pages that I read, and that would have alleviated a lot of the issues that I was having with the narrative as it was being played out and presented to us, the reader. Overall, though, I do think that Ruin and Rising is a decent conclusion. It's not perfect, but it's decent. Again, I have to get back on my Mal Stan train, and I don't really understand what people don't like about this man. The character that y'all read is not the character that I read, and I feel like there's some serious reading comprehension issues going on. I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's y'all, but at the end of the day, the character that was given to me on Netflix is the character that I saw over here. You know, I read like 1,200 pages, and the character that was in this book is the character that I saw on that show. The show, again, is a little bit more layered and nuanced and more depth because we actually get to follow him for a while. And here he's a side character. As for the revelation that happens in Ruin and Rising when we find out that Mal is more than just a super good tracker, I don't want to like spoil things just in case like that part of the story is like unknown to somebody 8 years after the fact. But to me, I didn't think that was forced at all. And I also feel like I've seen this narrative that Alina like gave up her magic for Mal, and like sure, but like it was also was part of a larger situation. It wasn't like Mal came to her and was like, I need you to like, none of the things that y'all presented me with is what happened. None of it. Not a single thing that y'all gave me was backed up by the text that I read. And so I'm gonna be a Mal stand for life. I love that for me. Hate that y'all hate the man, but that just means it's more for me, less for y'all. Most of the same issues I had with the rest of the series happened in Ruin and Rising. The same thing that Siege and Storm did, where the climax was like 5 seconds before the end of the book. I didn't like it in Ruin and Rising. I liked it even less so, but I did feel that Ruin and Rising did a better job of letting us see Alina preparing for battle and preparing for the end. So it was a little bit more forgivable, but I wish we could have had more of that. I did appreciate the epilogue in this one. The epilogue and the prologue in all of the books was like my favorite part. There's something about the way that Leigh Bardugo did that third person narration in those. I just really liked it. I think I probably would have liked this series more if it had been entirely in that perspective. You know, when we did the prologue chapters and then we would jump back into Alina's head, that was always a little jarring. It always took me a couple of chapters to get back into the swing of things. So I don't know. I liked that element of the series, but I wish the whole thing maybe, or again multiple perspective. But I had a really good time. I like Lena. I like Mal. I don't like the Darkling as a villain, and I don't like him as a love interest. I do want to touch about Bagra. Bagra was such wasted potential in this story. The fact that she like flung herself off a mountain, I'm never getting over. I also refuse to believe that Bagra is dead. Like I just don't believe it. If she was Morzova's, or that was his name, right? Morzova. If she was his daughter and he didn't die when he got flung to the river, I don't think she died flinging herself off that mountain. I think she's just tired of putting up with Alina and her bullshit. She said, I taught you everything I could teach you. It's on you now. Like, we're good. Just like I thought it was stupid that Alina had to cut the mountain with her fucking light powers. That was dumb, but that's neither here nor there. Bagra, I just felt like she definitely had a lot of wasted potential. Almost as much wasted potential as Mal, because I think that if Mal had been able, even if bare minimum it was just Mal and Alina, I think that this series would be better received. I also just think that Mal is very typical, like dumb boy energy that I love to see, and I think that if these were being published today, people would have loved to have seen it. I don't know what it is about reading the backlist that has people like, I don't know, but these were surprisingly solid, based on what I thought was going to happen. But that also means that it's time for me to read Six of Crows, and I have to say that I'm not actually looking forward to this one. I think, like I said before, between Ninth House as like the general Leigh Bardugo and books in the Grishaverse, I think this duology is going to be my least favorite. I'm not looking forward to this one really at all. I'm only 12 pages in, so I'm still on the chapter with the character that apparently is never seen from again, but we're almost done there. And then I'll get to properly meet the crows. I have to say that every time that Kaz Brucker does something that's supposed to be violent, I just kind of laugh, because for me, it's just so over the top that I just can't really take it seriously. And so I just can't. I also think it's really funny because to me, Kaz Brucker reminds me a lot of Nikolai, at least in relation to their sense of violence, and like that's gonna like make people fall in line and respect them, like maybe fear them a little bit, like, and it's just so over the top. It's even more over the top because with Nikolai, we just had to hear about him cutting off those fingers and like feeding them to the dog, and now it's like Leigh Bardugo was saying, well, you know, I wrote that trilogy, so I can just do whatever I want now, and so I'm gonna have my character just be ripping people's eyeballs out, and like I said, I have to laugh. Other thoughts are that Nina and Matthias are giving me what y'all told me Jude and Carden were gonna give me. Like, this is actual hatred. Like, this is actually, I'm trying to kill you. I understand they're going to fall in love with each other. I don't really think I care about that part. I didn't care about it in the Netflix show, and I don't think I'm going to care about it here. I just don't, I'm not invested in any of these relationships that are going to be developing, especially because they all seem to have that very similar relationship dynamic. I don't understand the appeal of writing that 3 times. That part is really confusing. Like, it's all very well. I guess like Inej and Kaz don't have like that level of animosity, but Jesper and Wylan have the same dynamic that Nina and Matthias do. So like, it does all feel a little redundant there. I still am not enjoying this nearly as much as I was the original trilogy. I think that the mission here, even for $30 million, so like 4 million a piece or whatever, that just isn't giving me enough. Like, sure, do I have $4 million? No, I do not have $4 million. But when it's like $4 million or you die, like the dying part would, I'm good. I don't need it that badly. So, and especially like in the grand scheme of life, like $4 million like is a lot of money, but it's not like, so I'm good. I'm good on that one. I'm fine. I don't need it. I think that Kaz's little negotiating skills wasn't like the world's greatest, but I'll let him think he's intelligent and smart. I also, a lot of people have said that they read like 20-year-olds in like young bodies, and I would disagree with that so far. Like, like the way that Kaz overcompensates with his violent outbursts feels very much like a child. Nina, I guess, is like older, but you can tell that she is just as young. Like, none of these characters, I think y'all just don't. Do y'all know children? Have you ever spoken to a teenager? Like, do you know them in your real life? Or you just sit on the internet? Do you just sit on the internet? I'm asking, but I'm also like, but I don't think these characters are reading like they're 30-year-olds and 17-year-olds bodies. Like, they read, I think, for the age that they are. Sure, they're in a much more mature setting. Fine, yes, but like that's no different than a lot of fantasy, so it feels age appropriate for a fantasy setting. And even for a contemporary setting, I don't think they would stick out that much. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. That seems to be the unpopular opinion. Other than that, I don't really have a lot to say. Not much. I mean, a lot has happened. The crew has been assembled. They are on board the ship. They are heading for Fierda. So we're going to see what's happening there. As for this little substance that's making the Grisha go crazy, I think that's an interesting concept. I'm interested to see where that goes. I also wouldn't call this really a heist novel. Like, I don't know. To me, kidnapping is not a heist. It's like the same thing with Mistborn, where, toppling a government regime doesn't sound like a heist. Like, like that's called a coup. We have a word for that, and so I think we should use words because they all have meaning. And I think that kidnapping is not a heist. So maybe Crooked Kingdom is a heist. I don't know, haven't gotten there. But kidnapping is not a heist. Like, sure, it has all the trappings of a heist. Like, you still have to have a plan and you're breaking into a building. But kidnapping, not a heist. Not a heist. So, also, I'm pushing back on the found family thing. We were talking about this on the Zoom call. But, sure, I just don't see, these are people who are never going to talk to each other once this is over with. Like, you're just not going to make me believe that. So, I'll see how it goes. But so far, I don't see a found family, and I don't see a heist. I finished Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and I have to say that I'm not impressed, which in part is why we're in the blanket, because I didn't think I was gonna like it, and I wound up not liking it, but not for the reasons that I thought. So, like I think I was saying before, Hasbrecker, to me, is very, every time he did something, it was very temper tantrum. It was very, I'm a child, I'm gonna act out because I'm a child. And so for me, I was never scared of him. I was never impressed by him. I also never really thought that, I don't know, there was something about him just didn't, I didn't like. But I also thought that Leigh Bardugo did a lot of things on this that were just very convenient. Like there was a lot of writing herself out of narrative traps that she had put herself in. It was like, oh, the narrative is stuck here, but oh wait, Jesper's suddenly a fabricator. Oh, we're stuck here. We're gonna have Nina take the crack. And it's like, I know that Nina is a character going forward, and so like either she's going to be battling this crack addiction for the rest of her time in the saga, or she's going to be like the only known Grisha to ever not succumb to the crack. I did like seeing the world open up here. You know, we got to spend a lot of time in Kirch and then Fierda, so like that was cool, that was nice. But overall, like none of the crows I was invested with. I did like Nina. Nina is still like my favorite. I did appreciate her, and I appreciated her and Matthias's dynamic and their journey. Even I don't know if I can say that I ship it, but I appreciate the dynamic that they had. I felt that that was probably what kept me going the most, was their scenes together and their arcs separately. I also felt that Nina and Matthias were sort of the blueprint for a lot of the emotional arcs that the other characters had, be that Jesper and Wylan, and then Kaz and Inej. They all have this like emotional constipation going on, and they all of the relationship dynamics are very similar to the Nina Matthias, and none of them are as compelling as Nina Matthias. So I was also kind of thinking, like, why would Leigh Bardugo do this when that seems a little unnecessary? I mean, this was, to my knowledge, like her first time juggling multiple perspectives, and I do think that that worked out well for her. I do think that for the most part they felt distinct, but also I don't know. Like a lot of it just kind of felt like each character had one personality trait that was sort of like brought up multiple times in their perspective that was kind of defining their narrative for them. It was a little bit flat and one dimensional, but I'm just gonna leave that there, throw that out there. We can talk about it in the comments. So but yeah, for me a lot of the emotional arcs and like the romantic pairings were together. I also never really found this like found family dynamic that y'all want to talk about. And I also push back on the theory that this is a heist novel. Um because it's a kidnapping story, and like that's fine, like we can mince words all day long, but it's like everybody and their mother wants to talk about how every other YA book is like ripping off Six of Crows, but in my opinion a lot of the books that I've seen talked about, like they're actually doing a heist, like there's an actual object that they're after and not a person. And so to me, like, okay, well, my camera's about to die, so I'm gonna end that here. I don't know if the dead battery thing is gonna be showing up on the screen. If it is, then we're just gonna have to live with it. But I'm gonna pick up Crooked Kingdom. I'm gonna get on this one. This feels pretty chunky. Let's see how long it is. 500 pages. Love that for me. Oh, we're finally getting a fucking pronunciation guide. At the end of the duology, we get a pronunciation guide. Okay, that's whatever. I'm just gonna pretend that that's normal. But I'm gonna pick this up. I'm gonna see how I like it. As of right now, I think I am gonna be returning Six of Crows. Like I enjoy, like it was cute, but I don't think it's cute enough for me to keep on my shelf. Especially when this cost me $20. So this is probably going back to Barnes and Noble. We'll see how I feel about Crooked Kingdom. What is up, you guys? I'm back with an update on Crooked Kingdom because I've read some of it. I'm just maybe a quarter of the way into it. I don't know. Haven't done the mathematical calculations, but I'm on page 168, so for a visual reference there. And I have to say that I'm still not really enjoying this book. So far in the narrative, we've had Inej was kidnapped at the end of the last book that we knew. And now we've seen her get rescued. We've seen them make a trade. We've seen them make a demand. So Kaz is like all in on getting this 30 million Kruga, which I have to say, I never thought he was going to get. I thought that his negotiating for the 30 million Kruga was a little bit ridiculous. And ultimately, I do think that Six of Crows could functionally be a standalone. We could have had Matthias die in the end of that one. He and Nina had already reconnected. Their arc together was already there, was established. It would have been just as impactful as him dying someplace else. And then We could have seen everybody just split up, go their own ways, because none of this is feeling like found family. Because I do think that Six of Crows could have been a standalone, and if it was a standalone, I probably would have rated it maybe a little bit more, because I honestly don't care about these characters, and yeah. But let's move on to that. So now we have Inesh's back. She's been rescued, and they're still trying to get this 30 million Kruger from this man. And the new plan is to somehow, they bought up some sugar. They're going to taint the rest of the sugar supply, and that is going to make them multi-millionaires. I think this is a horrible plan. I don't really understand how this is going to work for them. Fingers crossed, I guess. But at this point, I'm also not really invested in them getting this 30 million Kruger, because again, I just don't care. I think that the fact that they didn't die is like almost reward enough, but also like, I guess you could be paid for your services. But I also think that this like expansion of the Grisha into like this weird space with this drug, and Nina's being like a recovering crack addict, are all just plot lines that I don't care to see explored further. And I know that Nina appears later on in the Nikolai duology, but I don't need to see her again in this recovering drug addict phase of her life, because again, it's this thing where of course our main character, our prospective character, is able to do the thing that literally no other Grisha is able to do, and that is overcome the effects of this like crack-like substance that make the Grisha like even more powerful. And I have to say that the expansion of the world has also just like made me double down on this supernatural mythical racism that the Grisha are facing. I don't know. To me, in fantasy worlds, I don't like when the discrimination is solely against the magic users. So like the equivocation to me is misplaced. And so equating like fear of black people to fear of the person who can stop your heart and slow your breathing are not the same. Like they just are not the same, and it's the equivocation that I don't like. It's not that I don't think that they shouldn't be oppressed, that they would be like heralded as like, you know, whatever. I understand why they would be marginalized in a society like this, but I'm also just very bored of that trope. But seeing the world expanded outside of Ravka and into Kerch and Fierda and Shuhan and what is it, like Nova, the African country essentially. I don't know. I just wish that it was. I don't know. I just wish I didn't have to see like this thing where it's like, oh yeah, only the Grisha are oppressed, like only the Grisha are marginalized, and like I guess it's not only the Grisha, because it's very clear that the Suli are marginalized in ways that other ethnic minorities don't seem to be, probably because the Suli are traveling people that don't have like a home country, but there's like no Suli nation. They just kind of wander or whatever. So like I guess like them and the Grisha are essentially on the same level. But outside of that, if you're just like a regular brown skinned person, or, you know, an Asian looking person, like you don't face discrimination for that unless you're also a Grisha. And I think the only good thing about this is that we've seen Grisha who are not just Ravkin. So now we have Jesper and the Shuhan character whose name I cannot pronounce. I'd have to look at the pronunciation guide at the back of this book and like pray that it's there. So like we've seen other ethnic racial minorities be a Grisha without having to be from Ravka, and so that's nice. But outside of that, I don't like this expansion of the world. I don't think it really does anything, honestly. Like even in Six of Crows, when we got to go to Fierda, it's not like we got to see a lot of Fierdan culture. It was like, oh yeah, we're snow and ice, and here's the fortress that we're getting in and out of. So I don't really know for like world building is actually Leigh Bardugo's strong point here. I think that even after the even after the original Grishaverse novels, she's having, I don't want to say some trouble, but like it's just not very. I don't know. Like the way that I went into this, I was thinking I was gonna get world building. I was gonna get like these really fun plot lines, but it's really just been a duology about human trafficking, and I feel like that I could have been told that up front. I wish that I could say that I had just woken up, but that is definitely a lie. I've been up for a hot minute now. I ate some breakfast, did a little reading. I am now 2/3 of the way through Crooked Kingdom. We are so near the finish line. And I have to say that I actually think I definitely hate this one more than Six of Crows. Like, Here's my thing. I think that Leigh Bardugo is doing there's one thing about Crooked Kingdom that I think almost makes the book unreadable, and it's the way that she is like giving us constant flashbacks. In Six of Crows, I feel like we kind of got some of that with the Nina Matthias storyline about how they had been shipwrecked and then they, got stuck in the lodge together and they overcame their differences. Like, that's fine. It was cute or whatever. But I swear to God, like, every chapter, we have an extended flashback where we have to look at some moment in the Crow's past life before the events of this book. And every time, that event is unreadable because it is so incoherent to the rest of the chapter that I'd be like, weren't they just having a conversation? And it's like, I could have sworn that, like, let's say it's like Jesper and Waylon. I'm like, weren't those two just having a conversation? And now all of a sudden we're learning about Waylon's deep-seated issues with this person and how he came to be this person. And, like, not to make fun of the illiterate, because I'm sure that if you're actually an illiterate person, like, life would be very difficult for you, specifically if you were the illiterate child of a wealthy merchant in this kind of merchant economy that they got going on over there in Kirch. But the way that his illiteracy is framed makes me feel like there's some kind of, like, other thing going on. Like, it's not just that the man is illiterate, but there has to be some kind of, I don't really know what the terminology is, but it's not just, oh, this person's illiterate. Like, the fact that this person could never learn to read or write, like, if there's some kind of, like, brain processing thing happening there that I feel like could have been properly explored but somehow wasn't, and so it's just like, oh, he's illiterate, but I feel like you're giving me all of these deep-seated flashbacks. I could get some of that. And I also want to say that I don't really understand what's going on with Jesper's mom. Like, there was a whole extended chapter, because we learned pretty early on, no, it was like halfway through Six of Crows, that Jesper was a fabricator. And he's kind of done some kind of, like, fabricating stuff here, but his mother was doing all kinds of stuff. Like, she was fabricating things, but then she was also, like, healing people. And I understand that in the Grisha universe, that, like, in Ruin and Rising, they were like, well, Bagra and Morozova said, all Grisha should be able to do all things, and even Morozova was healing things and fabricating things, and, he was an anomaly. And I understand that the Darkling had a grip on, like, what the Grisha could and could not learn for, like, 500 years. But you would think that if they're over in the, what is the name of this goddamn country? Over in Novi Zim, where the Zemini people live, if they were over there fabricating and healing and also under attack, that, like, there had to be people over in Ravka that could heal people and make things, and, like, this is just like a regular Grisha lady. It wasn't like she was some all-powerful being. So the rules seem to be changing, but also Nina is raising the dead now, and I'm just like, for what? Like, it was bad enough that Sis was out here surviving the shit that, like, literally no other Grisha had survived. I didn't need her to raise the dead now. Like, it's just doing too much. And with the extended flashback sequences in damn near every chapter, Six of Crows really could have been a standalone. It really didn't need this, because so far this has added nothing. Like, all of this, the reason this book is so long is because the plot is so thin. Nobody trying to get payment for a job done should be 500 pages. And that's the actual plot of this book. The actual plot of the book is the Crows trying to get 30 million Kruger from this man who they know doesn't have 30 million Kruger, and yet, Mr. fucking Cass Brucker is out here like, oh, I don't have grudges. I don't hold grudges. I nurture my grudges. But it's like, sir, this is clearly some stupid vendetta. And at the end of the day, none of you are going to get your money. None of you are going to get what you want. So you've instigated this war, which none of these characters can win. And for what? What are they getting out of it? Because I'm being bored. I'm going to have a character die that didn't need to die now. I mean, sure, we can talk till the cows come home about how He was a horrible character, but I would argue that Matthias definitely went on an arc and definitely was able to see. I mean, to be fair, like our arcs where you learn that these people are human through like falling in love with one of them, like is that a good arc? Probably not, but you know what? It's what we got here. I mean, he also gets to see Kawaii, and he gets to see Jesper as Grisha, and like see them as like these are just people, especially someone like Jesper who he didn't even know was a Grisha, who none of them knew was a Grisha, and so he already had established a connection with Jesper outside of him and outside of a love connection, where it's like, okay, I can see him as a person, and oh, now he's a Grisha, but whatever, we can get into Matthias later. Like, I'm not gonna be out here in the Twitter streets defending the man, but I would argue that he definitely went on a journey, and I guess we wouldn't have seen that part of the journey but for Crooked Kingdom. But that enjoyment factor is so minimal for the fact that it's been 500 pages of them trying to collect payment that they cannot get. Like, this and this whole setup only existed to give the book a sequel. Like, we really just could have had a situation where Van Eck wasn't trying to double cross the double crossers and just pay them their money at the end of Six of Crows. Everybody could have went on their merry way. Crooked Kingdom could have been honestly just a series of novellas, because it seems like what this reads like is Leigh Bardugo had all of these character notes about all of these little moments in these characters' lives, and she wanted us to read about them. And so she wrote a story, but the story is so inconsequential that, like, I don't understand why y'all love it. I really don't get it. Like, Six of Crows is truly a standalone. And the more that I read Crooked Kingdom, the more I hate Crooked Kingdom specifically, and the more I enjoy Six of Crows, because at least Six of Crows, it might have been a kidnapping story, right? Like, it might have been like, we're gonna kidnap this person, but they did it, right? They executed start to finish, 3-act structure. Six of Crows is written just as blandly as the original Grishaverse novels, but now we get to bounce around. So at least when you're bored, you can look forward to the next chapter, because I don't think we've ever had a scenario when it's been back to back, same perspective. So at least you know when you finish a chapter in Six of Crows, you're going to go to a different character. You get to be with them for a minute. But with Crooked Kingdom, the enjoyment level is so low. Like, this is probably the first 2-star read of the whole journey. It's probably the first 2-star read, because it feels so extraneous. It feels like we have these constant detours, that these moments that don't impact the plot, and while they impact character in a way that actively, I feel like it almost detracts from them, because it's like, well, I can't do anything in the present because this plot is so flimsy, but I can keep giving you backstory. And at this point, I am full on backstory. I honestly didn't need any backstory for any of the Crows, if I'm being, not to the level that we're getting it, especially when these characters don't talk to each other. So it's like, it's great that the reader knows this about the characters and how this is influencing their motives, but none of the people in the group have had conversations about this thing. So it's like, I know it, but they don't. Sometimes it's a thing where it's like, yeah, they were having a conversation, it like kind of fades into the flashback and it kind of gives context for their conversation, so they are actually talking about the thing in a way, like you could see it that way. But sometimes it's just like, that has nothing to do with it. Like, we're just going to go on this detour for the flashback, so the reader has context, but the group doesn't have context for this. And so y'all supposed to be a found family according to the book streets out here on the Twitter, but they know hardly anything about each other. Every 3 seconds is a constant revelation about these people, and I'm just over it. I'm just over it. I think that for me, even though I'm going to be returning both of these, I don't want either of them on my shelves. Six of Crows is objectively the better book, objectively the better experience, and as soon as I'm done reading Crooked Kingdom, I'm gonna forget that I ever went on this journey. I mean, I can't, because I'm going to be picking up King of Scars, but to me, this book doesn't exist. Like, this right here is probably Leigh Bardugo's worst book that I've read so far. So I've been waiting for one of the Crows to die since Six of Crows, and honestly, before what I was reading right now, it could have been any of them, but the fact that Kaz Brecker isn't dead, like, if this man doesn't get shot in the face, what was the point? What was the point? Because I would have been shot the man in the face a good, like, at the end of Six of Crows, Once we got out of the Ice Palace, he would have been shot in the face. At the beginning of Crooked Kingdom, he would have been shot in the face. The fact that these people have not shot Kaz Brekker in the face tells me everything I need to know about this ragtag group of miscreants. But with that actually said, I can go now. 12 out of 10. Do not recommend Crooked Kingdom as of this portion of the reading vlog. It's always possible that my thoughts and opinions might change, but based on the fact that this is the story we're getting, I don't think it's going to. This book wasted my time. It wasted your time. It wasted Leigh Bardugo's time, because there's absolutely no justification for why this book should exist. Six of Crows, as far as I'm concerned, is a standalone novel that was weakened by the attempts of this book, which feel like a blatant cash grab, because this book does not have the plot or the characters to sustain itself for 500 pages. Now, I understand and I recognize that I'm in the minority when it comes to this opinion. You will never convince me that there is any reason that this book should exist. Because not only does the book fail to do what it sets out to do, which is it kind of gets revenge on Pekka Rollins, but not in any kind of satisfying way. So it fails on that front. And then the other part where we're just going to get, Inej back happens in 200 pages. This really only exists to weave in all of those backstories, those flashbacks I was talking about in previous updates. It only exists to give us character backstory. And you know what? You could have released those as novellas. Like, they really could have been digital-only releases that eventually got bound up and published that way. Because this, as it stands as a book, as a continuation of the story, doesn't need to exist. Because for me, it would have been far easier to rewrite the last 50 pages of Six of Crows that set up this stupid thing where they want to get paid and go on their way than it would be to write 500 pages. Because I know that this probably was longer at some point and it got edited. This isn't, this is what she initially wrote. There is no reason that this book should exist. And the fact that it does, there's no reason for it to be this long. This easily could have been a 300-page book. Easily could have been shorter. And the fact that it's so long is because, again, of all these meandering backstories that added nothing to the plot. As for the things that I need to say that I haven't already talked about at length, the way that Matthias dies, the way that that played out, the way that that was written was stupid. The fact that the fact that only one of these bitches died is already unrealistic to me. But two, the way that it played out was dumb. It was dumb. It was so dumb. It wasn't even a situation where Leigh Bardugo wrote herself into a corner. It's one of these people has to die, so here's a rushed explanation. And then the way that he died, and then the fact that there was only 30 pages left told me right off the bat that these people did not care about each other, because his death was not felt by this group. His death was not felt by this group. And you can tell me no funerals, no mourners, all the fuck you want. No, fuck that bullshit. The way that would have had an impact, get out of here. Get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry. It was stupid. From beginning to end, nothing in this book needed to happen. It happened. It exists. It is matter in the universe, but it does not matter to me. So this book is getting 1 star, really. 1 star. I was going to be nice and give it 2 stars, but it's really the way that she just spun her wheels for 500 pages, and you can tell me that Kaz is a master of this, and Kaz is a master of that, and Nez should have died. And Nez should have died. Kaz should have died. Really, all of these people could have died. I've been saying I wanted all of them to get shot in the face, but when that assassin was coming after Inej, bye Inej, it was nice knowing you. When Kaz was out here getting beat up, he should have died. I don't know why he's I'm going to use this to get the gang under my control. And even if you didn't want Kaz to die, he should have been the only one left alive then. Jesper dead. Wylan, his punk ass is alive. His punk ass survives. He should have died. Sorry. Bury your gays, Leigh Bardugo. Bury them. Wanted to see him go. Didn't want to see him live. I am upset. So, also the fact that I don't understand like what is going on with Jesper and Wyland. Hate that for them, love that for them, whatever they got going on over there. But I do not care about them. I like Jesper's dad. I'll give Leigh Bardugo that. He was a fun character to get added to the mix. But everything else I didn't need. I could have taken it or leaving it. My girl Nina becoming the Queen of Mourning. That's when, as soon as Leigh Bardugo wrote that, I knew someone was dying, and I knew it was gonna be Matthias. Like, even if I hadn't been spoiled for that like 39 years ago, as soon as Nina became the Queen of Mourning, I said, okay, well, Matthias is dead. Like, she just literally killed him off. He is not getting out of the story alive. And then like 4 pages later, the bitch was dead. So I don't know what y'all see in Crooked Kingdom, but in this duology, which I think overall is weaker than the Grishaverse, this is definitely the weaker of the two. Six of Crows is a standalone. If I were to compare them, right, like if I had just read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom for this reading experience, I think that I probably would have given Six of Crows more stars. Probably would have. It would have been. I think I gave it 3 stars compared to this. 4, like easily a 4-star book when you compare it to this. But because I don't really care about the characters in the grand scheme of things, that's really what motivated me to give that like a 3-star rating. Because it's just, I don't know. I thought that this was going to be the weakest series, and Leigh Bardugo pulled through for me there. But I don't think even Ninth House could be worse than this. I don't see it happening, because at least Ninth House will be serving a purpose. Like, it'll at least be setting shit up. There's reason for it to exist because it's like a new property. Crooked Kingdom don't need to exist point blank period at all in any timeline. I've read 170-ish pages, 173 pages. I'm on page 174 in King of Scars. I'm actually really happy that King of Scars looks the same as Rule of Wolves Naked. At first I was like, oh, okay. I'm happy for this though, because the Dust Jacket, I don't know if I actually like it, but I've read 174 pages. I don't know exactly what's going on, but we're definitely starting to get to what Monet teased me about. But so far in King of Scars, we follow Zoya, Nikolai, and Nina. But when I was flipping through at the end of the book, I noticed that we're getting a perspective chapter from Isaac, who is like a royal guard person living in the palace. Like, I think, yeah, he's in the palace. He was like one of the server people. My girl Nina is still mourning the loss of Matthias. She is going through it. She was dragging that body all around Fierda, but where I left off, she finally buried him. She has been undercover in Fierda, it looks like, trying to help get some Grisha out of the country. So love that for her. She's going back to what she deserves. And I think she has just met her new love interest. I don't know if that's actually accurate, but I think that's what's going to be happening. So I love that for her even more. She's still like the zombie Grisha. The dead bodies are speaking to her. Don't know what that's going to mean. In the Nikolai storyline, back in the palace, we have the cult of the Starless Saint, which I have to say that it's pretty good branding, you know. For the Darkling, you know, that's pretty good. That's pretty good branding. The Starless Saint, I'll give it to him on that one. So Nikolai is out here with the Starless Saint, priest man. Stuff is happening there. He is being turned into like a monster. He's been slaughtering the livestock, running around Ravka. Hate that for him. And then we also, like I said, we have Zoya's perspective. And look, Zoya is that bitch. She'll forever be that bitch. And I just am so happy to be in her head. I love it. I love her banter with Nikolai. It makes me so happy. I'm happy to see her being like, yeah, I'm just in it for the Grisha. I just want the Grisha country. Like, me, I only worry about the Grisha. But she's also, like, very, like, pro-Ravka, which is cute. But her first and foremost is, like, I'm doing what I can to look out for the Grisha. And I love that about Zoya. Loved it about her in the original trilogy. Love it about her now. I will say that Crooked Kingdom gave us a Zoya guest appearance, and that was nice. Like, that was probably the highlight of the book, was going to the Ravkan embassy and Zoya being there. I don't really give two fucks about Genya. Like, I'm happy she exists, but she doesn't do anything for me. Overall, I'm having a much better time with King of Scars. I think it's just because I'm back in Ravka. it feels much more like where this series is meant to be set. I do think it's a little odd that most of these characters definitely have to be in their 20s at this point, because Nina was a child during the Civil War, so she was like, let's say 13 at best, but I think she was younger than that. And it's been a few years, because now we know she's 17, but a year has passed, so she's like 18. So like, these are definitely characters in their mid to late 20s. And well, not like I said, Nina maybe like early 20s at this point, but I think she's like 19. But like Nikolai and Zoya, definitely mid-20s, and this is definitely just sitting on the shelf in the YA section of a Barnes & Noble near you. So, I don't know, like, I get that, and even Rule of Wolves was, like, it's not quite adult hardcover price, but it's also more expensive than a regular young adult. Like, it's up there with, like, a Cassandra Clare young adult, but at least Cassandra's characters are still, like, mostly teenagers. So it's just like, I don't know, like once we start breaking past like 23, I feel like your book can't be in the YA section. I'm going to go ahead and call it a night, go do my nighttime routine. I'll check in with you guys tomorrow after I've done some reading. I have managed to get 317 pages into this beauty of a book called King of Scars. And I have to say that I said this already, but I do think you could just read Sister Scrolls and skip to here, because this is just so much better. I mean, maybe if I had been reading this at the time of publication, I too could have been like upset, but because I went into this knowing we were going to get Nina's perspective, we were going to get Zoya's perspective, we were going to get Nikolai's perspective, like it wasn't just, I know that it's called King of Scars, but it's very much an ensemble cast. But I also don't think that, I don't think that Leigh Bardugo writes single POV narratives the best, so I don't know if she could actually pull off 500 pages of a single perspective. Like, that's number one. I know that I haven't read Ninth House yet, but after reading the Gersa trilogy, I don't think that's possible. Two, I don't think that this world is designed to give us standalone heroes, and so I don't know why I would want a standalone perspective in a world where I don't think that's necessary. And three, I think that because we have all of these different actors in these different locations, it makes the world, I don't know, it feels better. Like, I understand that Nina is often feared of doing her own thing, trying to like save the Grisha up there. The spirits are talking to her. The Fierdans are out here experimenting, forcibly impregnating captured Grisha. But there's that part of the narrative. We just met Isaac, and I said earlier that I've been like flipping through in the back of the book and I saw his perspective, and he wasn't in the first part of the book at all. He's only in part 2 so far. I mean, he appeared, but he wasn't in perspective until part 2. And he is they're trying to tailor him to look like Nikolai, because at the beginning of the book, they had set up like this royal ball situation where they were going to try and find Nikolai a bride to help strengthen the Rovkin country. But he just got kidnapped by the Saints, which I love. I'm loving every bit of the Saints coming in, being like, yeah, some of this history that y'all been, like these myths and folk tales, let's like set the record straight, which I'm loving. I did like the one chapter so far we got from Isaac. I think that he's a really interesting character, and I love getting the fact that people continue to like be made to look like other people is really fun to me, especially here, because Isaac is a white man trying to be another white man. When I was in Crooked Kingdom and they had that white man be tailored to look like a shoe, and it was the yellow face of it all, that was, I didn't like that one so much. I didn't like that. That actually was another reason I hated that book. Like, y'all were out here like, oh, we love Wyland, we want Wyland's perspective, and the entire time this man was walking around in yellow face. No, like, I understood why but no, that was weird. That was a weird choice, Miss Bardugo. And has anyone talked about it? I'm not Asian, so maybe the Asians are out here like they're fine with it. Maybe they are, and if they are, let me take a step back. But I was highly uncomfortable. So this white on white face swapping, I'm here for. Nina's storyline is interesting. I'm also not. I don't know what's going on with her love interest. I'm gonna wait and see on this new character that they've introduced. I think it's Hana. There's no pronunciation guide in this one. I don't know why there was one in Crooked Kingdom, but there's not one in King of Scars.
this don't make sense to me, but I think the character's name is Hana, and I think that's the new love interest. I'm gonna see where that goes with them. Zoya continues to be that bitch. Love Zoya. Could never hate Zoya. And overall, even I got this on Amazon, so like I wouldn't return it. It would just be stuck on my shelf. Like I would potentially unhaul it someday in the future, but I'm not contacting them, printing, shipping label. I'm good. But even if I didn't do that, I think I would want to keep this book on my shelf because I'm enjoying it so much. And I think that because Monet says that Rule of Wolves is even better. Like this is the one in the duology that people don't like, and I'm loving it. And that could mean that, you know, Rule of Wolves is even worse and I'm not going to like it. But I think that it'll just build on what's happening here. The Darkling is hanging over. And you know I don't like that man. I don't like the Darkling. I thought he was piss poor. But if Leigh Bardugo wants to come back around to him and like apply her new skills that she has honed over the years, I'm interested to see what she does with the Darkling this time around, to see, because the way that he's coming back, I'm actually in favor of. When Monet was telling me that he comes back, I was like, how? The one issue I have is that I wish that like a little bit more time had passed. Again, these characters are in like early 20s, mid 20s. I wish it was a little bit older, but I think if the characters were a little older, I don't know how they would market it. I don't know how, because I already think that it's weird that they're like 23 sitting on the YA shelf and they need to be over in the adult section. And if they were 30, they would really need to be over there. So I understand why more time hadn't passed since the Darkling was, you know, vanquished or whatever. And if it wasn't going to be so long, I almost wish that it was parallel to the Six of Crows stuff and not after the Six of Crows stuff. But I guess that would be a lot happening at the same time, which is a little bit, I understand like why they wouldn't do that. But yeah, I like what I'm seeing so far. I'm enjoying the narrative. I'm accepting the Darkling could come back and it's making sense. It's not like, bitch, what are you doing? It's not feeling like, yeah, I want to keep milking the Grishaverse. It does feel like, yeah, there's more story here. There's more to tell. And I'm, for one, am enjoying the story that she's telling.
You guys, I don't know what Miss Bardugo was smoking when she wrote this book, because it is night and day a difference from Cookie Kingdom. But this right here was excellence. King of Scars, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars because I do think that there were some issues with this current installment. But overall, I had a really fun time. I loved it so much. Let's get into it. So the thing that I didn't really like is my girl Nina. Now, in my Crooked Kingdom update, I said that I didn't really know if I was going to be here for Miss Zombie Sorceress Nina because it seems a little unnecessary. And I will say that her plotline in this one is probably the most disconnected from the main storyline of the cult of the Starless Saint and the resurrection and the plot against Nikolai's life from the Fierdans and the Shuhan. So for that, like I said, it's disconnected. It brought in some interesting things. I don't know if I needed it. I don't know what purpose it really served other than like, we're going to bring down the Fierdans. And I don't know if I care all that much about them. Like, I don't think that I do, particularly because I don't think that Matthias' storyline ended satisfactorily. And so being in Fierda with Nina doesn't really do much for me personally. So that's what I have to say about Nina. But Zoya, I love to see it. I loved every interaction that she had with the dragon master person. He was great. Love their dynamic. Elisbetta turning on everybody, being a secret Darkling stan, backstabbing, you love to see it. The Darkling possessing the high priest of the court, the cult of the Starless Saint, I love to see it. Like I said, I think that seeing the Darkling back with this incarnation of Leigh Bardugo after she's grown, after some of the characters are a little bit more complex, I'm here for, especially because it's characters that we've seen before. So getting to see Zoya again and Nikolai again, and, you know, I guess even like Genya and David again, and the twins, Tolia and Tamar, facing off against the Darkling again, I'm kind of here for it. I personally love to see it. I'm excited to see how that is going to come to a head in Rule of Wolves. This looks like a big book, but it's only like 500 pages because, yeah, it's like not even 600 pages. 588. The words in this are pretty large, pretty standard size font. So I'm excited to see where this goes. Again, the cover of this is stunning. Stunning naked edition. The spines are the same. The same design are on the spines, but obviously the covers are different. I'm assuming this tree is gonna... This gives me very Fierda vibes, actually. This, like, tree situation, but we're gonna see what's happening. I love the end paper. I don't think this fits the book, but I love the end paper. But like I said, I'm excited to see how the Darkling coming back is going to impact the plot of this book specifically. I'm curious to see what Zoya is going to get up to in this one, particularly now that they're kind of returning to the old days of the Grisha, where the small science... I did have issues with that before, where like all Grisha can do all things. If it's going to be all of the Grisha doing that, I'm on board with it. But if it's just going to be certain Grisha that are able to do this, I'm kind of not here for it. And I also really hope that Nina's like changed Grisha powers, where she's like raising the dead. I do want to say, speaking of Nina, when she sent the dead baby after the well mother, that was wild. We didn't need to do that, Miss Leigh Bardugo. That was unnecessary. What? That was creepy. But I do hope that if Fierda is going to march on Ravka, right? And they are going to try to attack, you would think that the zombie Grisha would be the one that you want on your side, because as soon as your body, like as soon as the Ravkan soldiers fall, she just reanimates them and just, you know, get back at the Fierdans. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I do think that it's going to be a lot of like, we're taking down Fierda from the inside out, which is not what Matthias wanted. And she seems to be on this like kick of, I'm going to make Matthias into what I want. I'm going to, you know, do what he wanted me to do. And I don't think that's what he wanted her to do at all. I think that's kind of like the exact opposite of what he wanted. So I'm kind of confused there. But like I said, if you have the zombie Grisha lady, the zombie Grisha lady should be on the front lines, or at least, you know, like a couple lines back, reanimating people that fall, like chucking bone spears, doing something. I don't think this was going to happen. I think I'm going to have to settle for Zoya just riding the thunderstorms and like burning bitches to the ground. And like I said, I'm excited to see how the Darkling is going to get handled in this one. I don't know. I'm having a really fun time. So I'm looking more toward the end of this series than I thought I was going to. And it's looking like I'll get to keep Rule of Wolves on my shelf, which is nice, because that just means that that Six of Crows duology is going back, because even though Six of Crows objectively was fun and lighthearted and I enjoyed it, Crooked Kingdom is ass. Just ass. And I don't want to look at Six of Crows and be reminded every day how much I hated that book. So I have 2 novels left to go. This and Ninth House, and then the lovely little graphic novel situation. So I do think that this video is going to make its release date. The end of King of Scars just... it kept going, and there were so many plot lines that happened. Like, we had to see Isaac get murdered, may he rest in peace. This surprise engagement, I do want to see how that's going to play out too. I don't think that that's going to follow through. I do think that, you know, I'm going to pray that Leigh Bardugo is going to give me Nikolai and Zoya, because otherwise, what was the reason? So I'm going to update you guys probably once I'm at the beginning of part 2 here. When I get to the making at the heart of the world, I will update. So, at the end of King of Scars, when the Darkling came back inside the body of the priest from the Cult of the Starless Saint, I thought the shit was going to hit the fan, because the Saints had clearly been picking sides, making alliances. Elizveta, I'm sorry, Elizveta. She had, like, betrayed the other Saints. One of the Saints got, like, burned alive or some shit. He got, like, cleansed from the timeline. And then Juris, you know, he was also, like, low-key murdered, and he joined with Zoya. And so now Zoya is really the Storm Witch, and she needs to open that goddamn door already. But what we have had so far is just a lot of whatever. Like, even Isaac dying at the end of King of Scars, and then the double cross of the double cross, where it was discovered that the princess wasn't really a princess and she was like a trained assassin. And then at the beginning of was it the beginning of this one, the other like Shu Han delegation like committed suicide and tried to take their princess with them. Like, I thought some stuff is really gonna hit the fan, but right now, Leigh Bardugo has just been moving the chess pieces around the board again, and I thought things had already been set up to be done with, be over with, like we're just gonna hit the ground running. But again, Bardugo is just moving around chess pieces, and so for me, it's like kind of taken away from some of the enjoyment. I'll also say that Nina's storyline is also taking away some of the enjoyment. I think that because of this like two front war, it is nice to see the perspective from Fierda. It's nice to see a perspective from somebody inside the ice court, but I'm still not sold that this person, one, needed to be Nina, and two, I'm not even sold on this Nina Hana relationship. I thought that was going to be a thing. I thought that was like what we were building toward. And I don't know, there's something about Nina. It's been 2 years that's been established since they breached the ice court, because they were just as seen at the ice court talking about how the prison break-in was 2 years ago. So 2 years have passed, and so that means that like roughly a year and a half maybe has passed since Matthias has been dead, which means that she was carrying around that dead body for a long time. Even if we want to be generous and say that the events of King of Scars and Rule of Wolves happened over like a rough 6 months time span, she was carting that dead body around for a year. That's a little bit disrespectful. I really hate that for her, but because of that, I'm also like, I don't know if this is like enough time for me to have like seen this one relationship that I was supposed to believe was like the end all be all, because she was just hallucinating this man. She's still low key be trying to do things for Matthias. Like every other thought of hers is like, I'm doing this for Matthias. This is Matthias would have wanted. I'm doing this for Matthias. Matthias knows that Fierda could be better. And so to see her be like, yeah, and now I'm going to get with Hana at the end of this, I feel like the buildup wasn't there. Maybe that's just me. Again, I don't understand what Nina's doing here at all, really, because, again, there's something about, like, a super powerful Grisha not being able to use her Grisha abilities because she's an undercover operative that just isn't entertaining to me. It's not entertaining. I would have almost preferred that the drug, the little crack that she was addicted to, just rob her completely, because then at least I would understand why she can't do anything. And I understand why she can't now, because she's in the confines of the ice court. But at the same time, Hana is over here healing the Fjerdan prince, who the Rovkins are trying to like pray that his disease will take him out. And so like I guess that's kind of some fun, I think it's dramatic irony where the audience knows things other characters don't. So it's kind of like this dramatic irony where they are planning on like his disease just ending him, and maybe that'll help him turn the tide of the war. But meanwhile, their undercover operative, their love interest, is over here healing the man, so he's gonna stay healthy and alive a lot longer and continue to undermine Nikolai's claim to the throne, who the audience already knows that this man does not really have a claim to the throne. So like there's just all kinds of levels to the shit that it's like I don't know if I'm enjoying this. Then we have Zoya, who has had like almost nothing to do this entire book. Her and Nikolai have had very little to do. I understand that they are preparing for war, and there's very little to do in preparation for war. But I also feel like because Ravka has always been at war, and all of the books set in Ravka have been them at war, the only thing different now I feel is that we're actively in the heads of the people who are actively preparing. Like, Alina was just moving people into position. Alina, I won't call her a master tactician, but I said this before when I was reading the original Grishaverse, and it's like, Alina's real great superpower was just letting people do what they do best. So, she knew that Mal could track shit, and she was like, I need you to track this for me. She knew that she could summon the sun, and that's all she was going to do was summon the goddamn sun. She wasn't doing extras, she wasn't going to do anything else. She knew what she could do, and she knew what other people could do, and she just let them people do those things. And Nikolai is kind of the same, but at the same time, we now have pushback from people like David, who doesn't want to create the Grishaverse equivalent of an atomic bomb, I guess. But at the same time, I don't know, there's something about the Grisha and the technology in the series has rapidly evolved. Because definitely in Shadow and Bone, we were still using swords and shit. I mean, they had guns and weaponry, but it was swords and shit. And now here we are, 5 books later, and we're out here with atomic bombs, we have aircrafts, we have submarines. Like, they have just really been in there on their bullshit trying to make all of these weaponries for a country that is actually broke. And I think that's another thing that I don't know. Like, Ravka has been so broke that I don't understand how they are pouring. I mean, I do understand how, because Leigh Bardugo has gone through, great pains to educate us on how they are funding these military innovations. But at the same time, it's like, you are so broke and you are still out here investing everything on these military interventions, and it doesn't seem to be working out for y'all. Like, that's the sad part, is that Ravka continues to innovate all of these things, and then Fierda and Shuhan and Kirch just like come in, take them, and do them almost better. And I understand why David doesn't want to create this city destroying bomb, because he knows that other people can come in and do it better. I don't want to say better, because I don't want to be like David is a nothing, a nobody, a powerless individual, because David is a clearly talented fabricator. Anything that's ever gone bad in this world, really, at least in the past, in recent Ravkan history, has been invented by David. So for most people living in Ravka, recent memory, if it was something that horrible happened, David invented the shit. So I understand his, trepidation on being like, I don't really want to do that. But at the same time, it's like, y'all need to do something. Like, y'all have they don't have all these Grisha, because the Darkling did slaughter a lot of them. And then, they were kidnapped by other countries and, like, all those things. So there's not, like, millions of Grisha just wandering around. But can we talk about how, like, this country that has the supernatural powerful beings, this man over here creating weapons of mass destruction left, right, and center, and for a brief period of time, not even thinking twice about it, like, he was just rolling them out, just like, yeah, this could destroy a whole bunch of shit, but here you go. And they are still losing. Rav could just stay losing. They don't ever get a chance to come up, and at some point, it's a little tired. I'm just a little tired. Zoya is over here with the whole ass saint in her being, using him as a fucking amplifier, and they're still talking about city destroying bombs. How about she just get on the storm cloud and roll out? We have fucking Nina over here surrounded by dead bodies. The ice court, she could definitely just raise the zombie army. She don't gotta do nothing with this goddamn prince. All she has to do is raise the zombie army that is literally under her feet. All the people who are buried there are kings and queens and Druskulla warriors. Literally, raise them. It would be over for Fierda. And we still haven't even dealt with the Darkling. I think that's the part that's sending me. Leigh Bardugo set up King of Scars. The whole book is set up for the return of the Darkling, which I thought she did beautifully. And I thought we were going to get to see him. We were going to get to see her write him again in this new era of her life after having written all these books. And clearly having spent quite a bit of time thinking about how she was going to bring him back. And he is like the side plot. But that's kind of where I'm at. I guess I'm kind of interested to see how the Shuhan storyline goes, with what's going to happen with that queen, and if Nikolai and that princess are really going to get married. I mean, I'm still rooting for Zoya and Nikolai. I don't think it's going to happen, but I am rooting for it.
I've made it to page 369 in Rule of Wolves. We're still moving pieces into place. Where I left off, we're having a cameo by one Kaz Brecker, who I'm sure the people love, but I don't fuck with Kaz Brecker. I really don't care about him. And I definitely don't care about him being motivated to protect Inej. Like, I don't care about that dynamic at all on any level in any universe. So, don't care about that. Nina's storyline is actually starting to bother me, because Sis is like kind of helping, kind of not helping. Hana is helping, kind of not helping. Whatever is going on in Fierda is not what I wanted. Like, I still do not understand why Sis is the zombie sorceress and is not being a zombie sorceress. What is the purpose? What is the purpose? Who is like, yeah, you're going to be the zombie sorceress, but we're not ever going to, like... She raised the dead to use that little baby to attack somebody, and that was the last time we got to see her be a zombie sorceress. Who said they wanted to see Nina be a spy? Who? That's what I want to know. Because, like, it was cute when that was her backstory, and that's how she, like, wound up with Matthias. But her no, don't fuck with it. I wanted zombie sorceress. If she was still just a regular heart renderer, sure, fine, go be a spy. But she's a zombie sorceress. The arc in Shuhan with who is it? I think it's Tamar is over in Shuhan with the princess and the assassin. That's all very cute. I like seeing that. That's nice and complicated mess. I'm enjoying that. The perspective that we're getting from the monk Yuri, who is being possessed by the Darkling, I fuck with that. Although I still don't understand why the Darkling is back. I was really hoping that the second time around, Miss Bardugo would want to do something with it, and instead she's doing nothing with it. She has decided that that's actually not what she wants to do. She just wants to continue to have this man do nothing, talking about, I'm gonna make a grand re-entrance into society. I really hope that he dies, because I know this is not the last Grishaverse set book that we're going to get. I know we're going to get like another book somewhere down the line, but this is making me like, I really don't want to see it. Like, I don't want to see, because then this like duology will have given us nothing. It will have literally given us nothing. There'll be no satisfying conclusion to anything. And so Monet said this is a 5 out of 5 star book, but this is very 3-star. This is giving very Crooked Kingdom tease, and y'all know how I felt about that. And if Miss Bardugo continues to jerk me around and not give me any kind of payoff, this is not the vibe I wanted going into Ninth House. After King of Scars, I was like, yes, we are doing it. We are going there. And now I'm like, oh, so that was a lie. All of that was a lie. And I really hate that for me.
I really wish that I liked this book. I really wish that Rule of Wolves was a good time, but it really wasn't. It honestly, it's not even that it was a bad time, and it's not even that it was just an okay time. It's more like it was a time that happened, because everything that Miss Bardugo set up here in this book, like, it's kind, I don't want to say it went to shit, but it went to shit. Like, this is probably the worst duology that I've ever read, because like the payoff for everything just wasn't there. So King of Scars sets up the Darkling's return. Like, that's literally what the whole book is about. Like, that's all it does, is set up the Darkling's return so that when he returns at the end of the book, it's great. But then Rule of Wolves is just a standard Ravka is at war storyline where the Darkling has nothing to do. And so he just does nothing. And then at the end of the book, he just martyrs himself. I don't know if you can really be a martyr if, one, nobody knows that you had actually returned besides like 4 people. And then you request for them to like grant you sainthood, which, why would they? Like, I understand why they would, based on like the context of like how he sacrificed himself. But in the larger scheme, aside from the cult of the Starless Saint, I don't know who is really going to be lighting a candle for the Darkling when, one, no one knew he came back, and two, no one knew that he had like sacrificed himself to like pull the fold back together. But also him like questing for sainthood is so weird, and like he has never felt like a more stunted character, which is so odd when in the rest of the duology other characters are having some like growth moments, sort of. I mean, Nikolai is like essentially the same person he was as a child, only now he's grown up, and now we see him like leading charges into battle and like also trying to martyr himself. If this book didn't end with Zoya being crowned the Dragon Queen, I don't think I would have cared about anything that happened. Like, I, in good consciousness, can't give this book a super low rating because I love Zoya. Like, Zoya Nazalinsky, like, that's the GOAT. She did what she needed to do at every step of her journey, even when she didn't want to do it. Although, with her ending the book trying to, like, free the Darkling, I think that's what this, like, rumored third Six of Crows book is going to be, where we're going to further tie the Nikolai duology and the Six of Crow duology together with this foolish mission trying to find Saint Felix's heart and like set the man free. But again, I don't understand what setting him free is supposed to do to anybody. Like, I'm happy that Alina and fucking Mal are off in the countryside living their best life away from the bullshit, because this is just, it's foolishness. If I were to tier rank the whole Grishaverse novels, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom are still on the bottom. Like, they're still not where I want to be. And this duology is right in the middle. And I'm going with the OG trio on top. And I think it's just because, like, that just had a more satisfying conclusion. Even with Miss Bardugo out here trying to rewrite history and do shit, like, it felt like a coherent narrative. You know, maybe it's a little standard, maybe it's a little hero's journey, but it was satisfying. I think that even the Darkling being brought back could be satisfying, and even his martyrdom could have been martyrdom in definite hard air quotes could have been satisfying had the narrative been willing to explore him actually returning and giving him actual points of view instead of the the book is really just like political, and I won't even call it intrigue, but it's like political maneuvering and Fierda and Shuhan and Ravka trying to save their asses. I'm sorry, but also like the fact that, I mean, I guess it's because Zoya became a fucking dragon. I don't know how you gonna fight a fucking dragon, but if she had not become a dragon, I don't know how Ravka would have like survived anything. Like they are I don't understand how anybody is eating in Ravka. It don't make sense. Ravka as a country, it exists through sheer plot armor at this point. So I finished the duology. I am on to my last novel of the project, which doesn't look like we're gonna go any better. It looks like the peak was really at the beginning of this video. But I have Ninth House. I've owned it for a couple years now since it came out. I grabbed the audiobook this morning, so I'm probably gonna listen while I'm at the gym. This is also a little bit shorter than Rule of Wolves. We're going back down to like there's only 450 pages in this one. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to get through quite a few pages at the gym. I'm just real sad. I'm really tempted to return Rule of Wolves. I liked King of Scars, so King of Scars can stay on my shelf. But Rule of Wolves, I don't know if I want to keep it. Like, Zoya does become the Dragon Queen. She does become the Dragon Queen. So, like, for that, but everything else, also Nina's whole storyline, I hated every second of it. I hated every second of it. And I would have been more satisfying if Nina had killed that prince thinking it was the prince. And then, whoops, it was Hana. I would have been, I mean, Ilya, I don't know what the, Ilya. So if she had killed Ilya and not, known, that would have been more satisfying to me. But I also think it's very strange that she still be hallucinating Matthias and now she's off with Ilya. And I'm just like, girl, if you don't pull it together. Also, she became the zombie sorceress, and we don't get to see her do no zombie sorcery one time. She talks about it. She talks about how the dead are around her. She talks about how she could make the dead do her bidding. Does the dead do her bidding? No. She used the dead to do her bidding one time. She drugged fucking Matthias's dead body around Kingdom Come for God knows how long, doing God knows what. And then there was no zombie sorcery. No zombie sorcery. I hated every second of it. I don't care that she's up there being Queen of the North. Nina is not. I don't recognize Nina anymore. All of the crows are trash. The only good cameo from a crow in this book was Inej. We're here to discuss this book, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. And I definitely expected that I wasn't going to enjoy this because I did not enjoy it the first time. But I'm listening to the audio, which I always feel like if I have to listen to the audio to enjoy the book, then do I really enjoy it? I don't know. I don't know how fair that is to audiobooks. We're still working through that over here. But I've read approximately 70 pages while I was at the gym earlier. I know I was somewhere in chapter 5 near the beginning. So I've read 70-ish pages. I'm enjoying it. So far, it's been a lot of vague backstory and dead bodies. But again, I think the audio is probably the way to go if you're going to read this. Because I do remember the physical book, I was like slogging through it. But also, the text of this book it looks like it's a larger print than the Grishaverse novels. And this is supposed to be adult. So I don't know how I feel about that, but that's neither here nor there. If you somehow have, I guess I haven't even told you what the book is about, but again, like, I don't really know what the book is about, but if you somehow made it this far into the video, and you've gone this long not knowing what Ninth House is about, one, I need your secrets in the comment section, because I feel like this has been talked about to death, but two, it's supposed to be dark academia, light fantasy vibes. I would compare it to kind of I don't want to do this, but I'm going to call it like a Deadly Education, where it's dark academia, but there's fantasy. It's not as fantastical as a Deadly Education. It's not on that level because we are still in, the regular world. They're at Yale. I think so far there's just ghosts and like glamour magic. There hasn't been a whole lot of other things that have been revealed to us in the first 70 pages, but we follow Galaxy Stern, who goes by Alex, who has been able to see ghosts, or as they're called here, grays, her entire life pretty much. But she's special because to her the ghosts appear in full color, and to everyone else they appear what? Gray. So she's special Deschel, which is why she's at Yale, even though she has not graduated from high school, which I could forgive if she was able to keep up with the course load, but sis is falling behind. And so to me, I'm like, you're falling behind and you didn't. I don't know. I feel like there's just a little bit too much stacked against her. She is not a white character, so you would really think that Yale would be kicking her to the curb, but I guess because she's special Deschel and not regular, she gets to stay in, so love that for her. We know that her mentor figure, Darlington, has been disappeared. And there are well, I don't want to call it a series of murders, but a girl has definitely appeared dead, and that's suspicious because it's a dead body. So that's just kind of where we're at right now. I'm enjoying it more. I'm excited to get through this. I think it's just because I did not like Rule of Wolves so much, and I did not like Crooked Kingdom so much that maybe expectations have finally been set and we're just exceeding those low expectations. I'm going to take it though. At this point, we're so long into this project. It's almost been a full week since I've started, and I am ready to be done here. So if we're going to be ending this on a high note, I'm going to take it. So I have made it to 68% in ninth house. I was listening on my iPad while I did the what is the word I'm looking for? I was doing reading sprints earlier. So I did some reading sprints and I was listening on my iPad. Before that, I did some sprints with Monet on Zoom and I made it to 41% there. So I understand that I'm coming in to update you guys a little bit late in the game here. I'm not going to be as spoilery in my discussion of ninth house because one, so far, only book one is out. And so unlike what I was talking about all the Grisha books where by the time I'm reading Rule of Wolves, if I'm spoiling things for like Shadow and Bone or Six of Crows, at that point I feel like it's a little silly. So here, I'm going to do my best to not be as spoilery and just communicate my thoughts in a way that I think is still effective, but will not ruin this for you if you decide that you still want to read Ninth House, because it is, like I said earlier in the vlog, the start of a series. Now, I'm not particularly blown away by this book, this installment. I'm not even sure that I would call it dark academia. I don't know what the people are saying in the streets. I think that earlier in this vlog I described it as a dark academia where we're following Galaxy at Yale and there's a murder. And so far that's definitely been a thing that's happened. There was a murder and she's at Yale and there are these spooky wooky bump in the night things happening around her. But it feels more just like standard ghost story than it does dark academia. I know that there are secret societies and things are happening, but I think that because there isn't Galaxy is a Latinx character from my understanding. Where in the diaspora she falls, couldn't tell you, but we do know that. But there isn't this, it is also set at like a predominantly white institution, and we do see characters there being overtly racist to her, but the way that Galaxy responds to a lot of these actions and the way that she feels surprised by some of these actions make me like, I know that Leigh Bardugo wrote this. Now I don't know if Leigh Bardugo is actually like a spicy white or just like regular white. To me she looks regular white. She could be a spicy white, I'll never know. But some of the things that Galaxy complains about, or there's a scene where Darlington is like when they're first linking up and he's telling her the words to get banished the ghosts or whatever, and she's like, well, you don't know how important that would have been to me because I've been seeing these ghosts my whole life and I've been powerless against them because they definitely can hurt you, but y'all were like spying on me, but you guys never actually stepped in to help me until I was beneficial to y'all. And I was like, well, yeah, these are white people. Like, like I think Darlington is also supposed to be white, but he might also be like something else. I don't really know. He is one of the things I'm actually enjoying about this book, even though I'm pretty sure, like, I don't want to speculate, but I am enjoying Darlington. Um, but I'm like, Lady Yale, all these people in charge over there, they're white people. Like, they're definitely not gonna step out of their way to help this little brown girl out of the goodness of their heart. Like, that, there's like things like that make me feel like, yeah, a white person wrote this. Maybe, like, and again, like, it's cute that Galaxy, I don't want to say cute found, like, it's it's nice, I guess, that Galaxy is not a white character, but I think there are moments in the book where you can definitely tell this is a person of color who is written by a white person, or who appears to me to be a white person. I've never seen anybody refer to Leigh Bardugo as anything else. So maybe this is like own voices and I just don't know it. I'm ignorant to that fact. But there are things where I'm like, this doesn't feel authentic. I don't even know if authentic is the right word, but it just feels like a little naive. That's the word it feels. It feels a little naive sometimes. As for the investigation that's happening, again, even that seems to be taking a backseat to like the paranormal happenings. And I understand that some of them are happening in tandem, but we also have this dual timeline where Darlington is predominantly in the past, like showing her the ropes leading up to his disappearance. And then all of Galaxy's chapters are after his disappearance and dealing with the death of this girl. And I'm sure those two interact, like those two things are intertwined. And we're starting to see some of that come into play now that we're 75% of the way through the book. I will say that there is I would call it a pretty graphic rape scene that happens early on in the book when Galaxy is talking about her past, and she was a child during that time. So if that's content that is going to be upsetting to you, know that that's in there. And then around the 60% mark, there is another less graphic assault scene, but we do know that it happens to one of Galaxy's roommates. But overall, like, enjoy feels like the wrong word to use after discussing those scenes, but I am having a better time reading this than I expected. I did expect a little bit more because this, like, I understand, like, this in a lot of ways is her adult debut. So there's some slack I feel like I should be giving Leigh Bardugo, but I also know that Leigh Bardugo had written multiple books before this, and a lot of those, well, not a lot, but like the Six of Crows duology, people wanted to act like those characters felt old to them. I still disagree. Even though we just talked about how I feel like the Grishaverse needs to move into the adult space given the age of all of our main characters now. But this, I can feel like there are some growing pains here, and it's by no means bad. Like I was saying, it's not a bad book, but it does feel debut-y, and I feel like I don't really know how much slack to give when I know that this person has written so many things already. So I'm still trying to find the balance there. Uh, and I do feel like the book unfurls a little slowly, even for a Dark Academia. Because I understand that Dark Academia is still usually a very slower paced story than your typical thriller, which also usually involves a murder investigation. But here, because of the dual timeline for like the thing we got going on, I think that's really what makes it feel so slow. Because sometimes we're really hitting our stride, and then we have to go back and forth, and then we have to go backwards. And even sometimes during Alex's chapters, we have to go back. We have to do these flashbacks. So a lot of the times when there is forward momentum in the story, that's when Leigh Bardugo decides to like yank it, and it feels a little disconnected to me. And I think that's the part, like, those are the parts that I'm not super vibing with. So that's really all I have to say for this part of my update. So I'm just gonna give you my final thoughts on Ninth House, and then I'm going to go and read that. So this is another book that I think could have been a standalone. I think that I would prefer this if it was a standalone, and I think that Leigh Bardugo would prefer if this was a standalone, because I know that she's written other things. I think Ninth House and King of Scars came out in the same year, And King of Scars' conclusion, Rule of Wolves, came out earlier this year because I think that Leigh knows that the Grishaverse is how she's actually making the mortgage payments. And this was a cute little detour. I think it was an interesting adventure to go on in adult fiction. But I think that I do not trust Leigh Bardugo to write more in this world. And I think that because of her history with duologies, where the first book is promising and the second book goes to shit, I don't know if I would want to read Ninth House 2, whatever you would even call that. Like, I don't know. Will I read it? Probably. But I don't think that it was, I don't know. Here's where I land. Darlington was my favorite part of the story overall, and I think that it was the most generally intriguing part of the storyline overall, because I have to say I was not really invested in the murder of these dead girls. I did like that we got answers to that. I did like that we found out what was happening to these dead girls. I liked that there was a through line with all of them, but I also didn't really care that Galaxy was like the super special person. Like I don't know. I don't know. Like, it's a fantasy book, and so on some level you have to accept that one of the characters in there, and probably the main character, is going to be super special at something. And so it wasn't even like, oh, she's like the super special entity, but it's like you just found out what you are. And in the next book, I'm gonna have to deal with you coming to like figuring all of that shit out, and trying to save Darlington, and trying to do shit that ain't no one ever done before. And I know it's a Leigh Bardugo second book, and I would hope, this is my other fear, is that I think if it was to continue, and it looks like it's going to, I would want it to be just 2 books and call it quits, because I don't like, there's just not, there are avenues to expound this, but I don't know if I would trust Leigh Bardugo to expound it, and I don't really know where all it could go. I also think that it's, in a lot of ways, if you went into Ninth House for like the dark academic vibes, I don't see how that would be a part of a second book, and I don't see how you could make Dark Academia into a series. I know that Naomi Novik is also trying with her series over there with A Deadly Education, and I think the second book is called The Last Scholar, The Lost Scholar, something like that. It's like green and ugly, just like the first book. But I also think that that book failed because the first book told a complete story, and they were all doing shit that ain't no one ever done before. And so to me, like, Dark Academia needs to be one and done. I don't need to keep coming back to Academia. And I'm sure that now that I've said that, anybody who has made it to this point in the video and is like a Dark Academia stan is like in the comment section trying to tell me that there's all these other fantasy Dark Academias that kept going. To me, it's one and done. One and done. I also think that a lot of what makes Dark Academia, aside from the overt racism, is supposed to be some kind of discussion about class stratification, because that's really easy to illustrate in a school setting, particularly when you choose your school to be Yale. And I feel like a lot of the class stratification conversation it happened at the end of the book, and it was all very I don't want to say ham-handed, but there was a lot of like shock and awe going on. And I feel like, and it wasn't even just Galaxy anymore. It was like the other person who was there. I wanted to say her name is Michelle, but I don't think that's accurate, and I can't be bothered to like flip to the page and like see. But they were also surprised. They're like, oh yeah, they're all gonna get away with it. All of these rich white guys. And I was just kind of like, even in 2019, like, if I'm going to, believe that it was set in 2019, or if I want to be really generous and give it like 2018 or whatever, people been new. Like, white people, rich white guys getting away with shit was not brand new. And I feel like if you were a student at an Ivy League institution, you would definitely know that already. Like, that wouldn't have been a surprise to you. Just because you're part of this secret organization where people have magic, there's no way that you actually thought that all people were created equal at Yale. Stop. No, I refuse to believe it. As for how everything tied together, it was fine. It was good. Like, it all made sense. I think that, I don't know if I it's definitely not my favorite Leigh Bardugo book by any means. I do think that it drags a little, and I think that this just, again, some of the issues I had are because it's dark academia, and that's just a genre that you're not going to catch me caping for any day of the week. I think it was nice to see Leigh Bardugo branch out a little bit, do something a little bit different. But I would be in no rush to get back to this. And as much as I like Darlington, I don't really care about him coming back from being a demon. I don't think I care about him coming back from being a demon because I'm not invested enough for that, especially because what is he coming back to? You know what I mean? Like, we're going to drag him to, like, save him, but he might be having a better time as the gentleman demon. Like, he might be having a good time over there, and what is he coming back to? So that's what I have to say without being spoilery, and I don't really want to talk about spoilers, honestly, but if you want to leave comments down there, just make sure that you mark them, make sure that it's like you spoiler warn for the people that are down there in the comments. But overall, I wasn't overwhelmed by this. I was just it was an average read for me. It was a very okay, and I think that from an established author, I would have wanted more. If this had been somebody's debut, I could be a little more generous with it. But Leigh Bardugo's been writing for a long time. She's been asking people to pay for her writing for a really long time, and I think that this was not really the wave.
I grabbed the audiobook, and I also went and grabbed the physical book from my library. And so I've been listening, and I'm at 42-ish%. And I have to say that this is a far more complicated story than I thought it was going to be. I don't know what I was expecting from Wonder Woman Warbringer, but let's get y'all the basic plot summary. So, we are with Diana, and I have to say that the beginning of this was a little confusing. I guess I should have understood because it's YA, but it was definitely giving me like the start of Wonder Woman 1984 vibes, where like Diana is like a little girl and not, Diana is 16, 17, but Diana is 16, 17. And we are starting off at the island at Themyscira. There's going to be a little racy race, and Hippolyta is like, no, you can't be in the racy race, like you're not ready for this. And if you enter the race, you need to win the race. You need to win the race. But spoiler alert, she does not win the race at all. So sucks to be Miss Diana. But what happens is she sees this shipwreck and she hears this human voice, and she's like, there's no way I'm hearing a human voice. No way, because I'm on the island at Themyscira and they're way out there in the middle of the ocean. And so then it gives like more proactive Wonder Woman from like 2016 vibes, where Diana jumps into the ocean, saves the girl, and she like hides her away in a cave and is like, I'm gonna help you out. Only in this version of the story, the Amazons don't discover that she's saved this person, and what happens instead is the island of Themyscira revolts. Like, there's earthquakes, there's a storm, people are falling sick. Like, that don't happen on Themyscira, and it's happening, and Diana is like, fuck, what did I do? I'm ruining the situation for me and the homegirls. And so she decides that she's going to go visit the Oracle before the rest of the Amazons can. She's going to get the tea, figure out what's happening, and save the day. And so she discovers that the girl that she saved is what is known as a warbringer, and they're the descendants of Nemesis, who are the cause of like all the strife in the world, who are like out here ruining shit. And if Diana just doesn't do anything, then the little girl will die, and all will be right on Themyscira, and the world at large will be fine until another warbringer is born. And then Diana, because she's Wonder Woman, she's a superhero, she's like, well, I can't just let this girl die. How can I save everyone? And so we are going to go on this quest to purify the girl. And I'm having a really good time. So far, we've made it off the island of Themyscira. We are in Manhattan because, it's timey-wimey magic bullshit, but I'm here for it because it's Wonder Woman. Like, that's kind of baked in. When you're messing with Greek mythology, you can have some timey-wimey magic bullshit happen, and I'll accept it. And I will say that I'm appreciating the fact that I decided to get the audiobook of this and not just read the graphic novel adaptation, because I think that so far as a novel it's working a lot better than I thought it was going to. But I think this is like the most fun that I've had reading a Leigh Bardugo book since I was reading the original trilogy. No, I take it back, because I really had a lot of fun reading King of Scars. I didn't like where that duology wound up going, but I liked being back in Ravka. I liked seeing Zoya. I liked seeing Nikolai, even Isaac. Like, there's a lot to like in King of Scars. So I won't say that I haven't had this much fun since I read the original trilogy, but this is the most fun I've had in a while. And so it does look like I'm going to get to end this on a high note. I'm currently at like 88% of Leigh Bardugo's Wonder Woman Warbringer, and this book is nothing like I expected it to be. I would argue that Diana is not really the main character here. She's definitely a side character. I mean, she is definitely important, but there's like a group of people that are involved. We're dodging assassination attempts. We're nearing the end of the quest. There was a really big reveal about one of the side characters, Jason, his lineage. That was an interesting reveal that I appreciated. Nim and Theo are really interesting side characters that are like out here doing their own thing, that are, I don't know, it's wonderful. I'm having a wonderful time. I think that if you were nervous about reading them, I say go for it. Now, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who is not an avid comic book reader.
In the last week, this is what I've read. I read all of these in a week. This is insane. I'm sorry. This right here in 7 days, I think that's pretty impressive if I do say so myself. But I'm here to wrap up the vlog portion on this book right here, Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. I actually did listen to the audiobook of this, and I did not read the graphic novel adaptation at all. I do like it. I like the story here, so I am going to keep the graphic novel version. I do think I'm also going to try and find the UK hardcover, because I think that those hardcovers just look better than the US one. But maybe if I can't, or the UK one just turns out to be too expensive, I'll settle on this, because this was a 5-star read. This right here, Wonder Woman Warbringer, was 5 out of 5 stars. I had a really great time. Like I was saying earlier, we're following Diana and this group of friends, Theo, Nim, Jason, and what is her name? I always want to say Arlia, but I know that's incorrect. Alia was great. I didn't expect her to be so important to the story. I didn't know what I was getting into when I started reading Wonder Woman Warbringer, but it was just really great. The third act, the plot twist, the stuff that was happening, the way that Diana had to prove herself was 10 out of 10. But definitely one of the highlights of this entire past week. So love that for me personally. Hopefully you guys also had a good time. So if you've made it to the end of this video, let's go ahead and leave this emoji down there in the comment section. Let me know what Leigh Bardugo book is your favorite. And thank you so much for watching, because I know this video was long. I know it wasn't short and sweet and to the point, but hopefully you had a good time, and I'll see you guys again soon with another video. But until then, and until next time, bye.